I knew it was going to be tragic, but I never, in my mind, expected all of that. Welcome back, everyone. We are here to talk about Season 2, Episode 7 of Peacemaker, Like a Keith in the Night. But before I get into that, I just want to give you a fair warning, spoilers ahead, and now I will break it down for you before we get into that episode.
Break it down for me.
When we pick up with our heroes, it's clear that everything is about to go completely sideways. We have Harcourt and Chris who are at Argus. Harcourt's pointing out all the obvious points that would let Chris know that he's in basically an Earth X-like reality. That's when Harcourt 2 comes in and points out that that other Harcourt is not her. And now Argus is after Harcourt from the main reality. Chris decides to team up with her, and the two of them fight their way out of Argus and are now on the run. Meanwhile, Adebayo's also running for her life, and she ends up being saved by Judo Master. The two of them actually have a nice little chat as well as they find some refuge and play a game of Scrabble, which is basically this reality's version of Scrabble. In the main continuity, Rick Flag Sr. is still trying to find the 11th Street Kids gang, and so he goes to Sidney Happerson at the behest of Lex Luthor to try and find out where this portal is using Lex's technology, which is obviously bad for our heroes, but like I said, they have their hands full in the other dimension. While Amelia and Chris are on the run, they end up being saved, surprisingly, by none other than the top trio, Augie and Keith, who take them in and also get rid of all of the cops as they are witnesses and they don't want the authorities to know about their dimensional portal door as well. They have the same kind of problem that Chris is having. They take Amelia and Chris back to the house where they have Economos tied up and surprisingly do not actually fight. Instead, they just begin to have a conversation where Augie asks what happened to his son, Chris, and just basically says, you know, I'm kind of tired of everybody killing everyone. I'm actually not a bad dude, despite the reality I live in. I try to do my best here. I fight the fights I can fight, and I want to help you guys get back home. Just never come back here again. While this speech is happening, outside of the house, Vigilante and Vigilante have come together with Adebayo and Judo Master, and they're trying to sneak in. And that is, of course, when Vigilante sees that Economos is all tied up, and he decides to make a move on Augie, thinking that Augie is the bad guy here. That is when he gets brutally attacked and killed by Vigilante, much to Keith's disdain. This also happens after the cops of Earth 2 have shown up at the door. So now we're in this crazy shootout with the cops, and we also have Keith, who now wants to take out Chris because he's upset that he killed both his brother and also him being there basically resulted in the death of his dad now. So they're about to have this crazy fight. The 11th Street Kids gang end up holding Keith back, restraining him, and they're messing him up. And that is when Chris screams, no, please stop. They end up deciding to leave it, and everybody is able to go back to their dimension with Vigilante holding off the cops as they get out. And right before they get out, Harcourt has a moment where she considers taking out Keith, and actually she would if the cops hadn't interrupted her. So she is forced to flee as well, leaving Keith alive and leaving her afraid that he will come for Chris. When our heroes get back to their dimension, Vigilante Adrian's house has been surrounded, and they are forced to turn over the dimensional portal to Argus. Chris actually says that everyone convinced him to do so. Judo Master backs him up, and so Chris is back in custody. He is going back to prison, but everyone else, it seems, will be okay. That's where we leave off. It was a crazy ride, let me tell you. I can't even begin to explain how my brain felt after watching this episode. And this episode, I think, perfectly encapsulates what makes this show so amazing. And that is that, yes, it is a superhero show. Yes, it is science fiction, and it is kind of off the wall when you think about what happened here with Keith. Keith is a character who is becoming a villain because an alternate version of his brother from another dimension killed the brother that he knew from his own dimension and also ended up killing his dad. So the whole idea of even what that is so comic booky. I love it. But it also, there's so much stuff in here that's really grounded and really relatable. The fact that Augie gives this amazing speech where he just talks about, just because I'm here, I'm not a Nazi. That's not what I believe. This is just the world that I live in. I don't have any control over that. I can't change the entire world. So what I do is I just try to do the best that I can to help as many people as I can within my own power. And he says to Harcourt, I applaud you if your reality, you guys fight every injustice you come up against and everything is great and you basically come from this utopia where there's nothing wrong. But for me, that's not what I have. And it's so real. It's so raw, I feel, that speech, because Harcourt is especially in the same boat. She's just someone that's trying to get by. She does what she can, but for the most part, she's got her own thing going on, like everyone, right? We all are living our lives, I think, trying to do the best we can for the most part. And that's all we can do. We're in systems that we just simply do not have the power as one person to change. Change comes from a lot of big things. This episode, it really, really spoke to me. And I have to shout out John Cena's performance here. In the podcast, Danielle Brooks talked about how this is the season they deserve some nominations for their work on this show. She said, especially with what John Cena has been doing. And I have to say, I agree wholeheartedly. This entire cast honestly deserves awards. Everyone has been so good. The entire crew. Everyone is just so passionate about the project, and it's so clear that everyone's on the same page and totally here for it. John Cena's performance, when he has to watch as Chris, his brother Keith, in this alternate world, be held and pummeled by his friends from his own dimension, is one of the most heartbreaking things I think I've ever seen. The scream that he emits, it is so guttural. It's so real. That is what acting is. And something that I also love is that in the podcast, I love watching the podcast after. I just want to shout out to the team for doing that for us. Not only do you learn a lot about the episodes, but you just learn a lot about filmmaking and acting, and there's a lot of stuff that they go into. And James Gunn gave this great piece of advice, which is, when you are an actor and you get in your head about stuff, you just need to remember that, your feelings don't matter. And it kind of sounds like a jerky thing to say, but what he means is, let that go, because that's not what this is about. We're here to do this thing, and when you worry about if things are bad or good, it trips you up in your head. It's so true. And I just love that you get to connect with the cast on this level in that podcast of just them being people. A lot of their experiences that they talk about as actors too are so relatable, and it just makes me feel that, even though I haven't been in a big blockbuster movie or anything, it can happen to anyone at any time, really. It's so unpredictable. Nut, who plays Judo Master, he was actually about to quit before he booked this role. How crazy is that? He's also amazing in this episode. And I love that he is coming into the fold. And I love that he is coming into the fold of the 11th Street Kids gang. It is so cute. Some of you were predicting that this was going to happen in my theories video. And I definitely was I could definitely see that being a theory that will come true. And it seems like even though he is on Argus's side, there is this sense that you get at the end that he's really just backing Chris up here because he believes it's the best thing to do in this scenario. He doesn't actually want something bad to happen to Chris. It's just he knows that this is the only way that they can protect everyone and that Chris is right. And so even though they have this rivalry, at that moment it feels like they're so on the same page. And the fact that Chris is ending up back in prison, seemingly, so heartbreaking because he's been on such a journey. And at the end of this episode, I think he's really in the lowest place that I've seen him, where he realizes that it's not about being in the right or wrong world. It's not about Keith's world being wrong or his world being wrong or any of that. He feels that he is the problem because no matter where he goes, tragedy follows. He is causing all of these problems. And he has just come to think that now he is the issue. The grass isn't always greener on the other side because it's all about really how you feel inside yourself, which is also the irony of this moment because it is Peacemaker believing that he is not worthy of love that holds him back, much like what we see with Harcourt. So those two characters are very, very much, I think, the same in a lot of ways. Like Chris says, I think there's a lot between them that they can really understand about each other. And there is this self-loathing that Chris needs to still heal from. And he's trying to convince himself in this season, I think at the beginning, that he has healed from it and that it's weird that nothing is getting better, but I don't think he's actually dealt with the trauma. It's also crazy to me that Harcourt was going to take Keith out, even though I understand from her perspective, even though she knows that if Chris finds out, he's never going to forgive her. She has to do this to protect Chris. And once again, she's thinking about him. And so I think deep down, she really does love him. I don't know if she's in a place where she can be with him in the way that he wants. I don't know if she feels ready for that. But, you know, there's nothing that she wouldn't do for this guy. And that is the truest form of love there is. Even when you know it's something that they're going to hate you for, you do it to protect them. Oh, it's so sad. This whole entire episode is so sad. And I was never expecting the whole heat of the episode to come from a conversation. The fact that Augie doesn't actually want to fight Chris, doesn't want to fight Harcourt, doesn't really want to fight Economos. He just wants to know what's going on. And he actually doesn't blame them because he knows that even though he loved his son, that his Chris was not a good person. And it's weird because there's also this mirror between Augie and between Chris in the sense that Chris loved his dad, but he knew his dad was not a good person. But he tried to convince himself, I think, that deep down his dad could be good because he loved him. And that is the same thing with Augie. Deep down, he loves his son so much, but he also knows that he's not good. And so he can't blame, Peacemaker from the main reality for taking out his son because he's like, yeah, my son would have just killed you. That is the guy that he is. He was violent. He had problems. And seeing also Keith's reaction to what do you mean we're just going to let this go? But also Augie is a guy that clearly in this reality is not a bad guy. I'm with Chris. I don't think he was a Nazi. I mean, James Gunn confirms this is the one guy that isn't that in this reality. So the way that all plays out and the fact that there are so many parallels between Chris and his dad in this alternate reality, it just makes it even more tragic to have lost him. And the fact that Vigilante just comes in full on just repeatedly stabbing him is so sad. It's really sad. There's also some fun moments in this episode, and there's some great action. I love the opening action sequence. I love how we have, and I think this was something that Jennifer Holland was talking about on the podcast that was one of her favorite moments for the action, where her stunt double did the double flying kick. That kick is so crazy, and it was so real the way they shot it too, because she does it and then she falls and hits the desk. And I've always thought when people film stuff like that in fights, it always looks so fake because everyone's doing that and landing in a way that isn't too bad, but her landing is so brutal because when you move like that, I mean, yeah, what else is going to happen? You're just going to fall. You might kick someone, but then it's ow. So I just loved the realism that they kind of take when it comes to some of this action. It's still big, it's still larger than life, but like I said, that's what I love about James Gunn. He can do things really big, but there's still something that really grounds everything, that brings you back down to earth, that makes you feel seen. And I think superhero media is really the best when we use it as a way to reflect upon ourselves, upon the world, and kind of ask ourselves, what do we see as being a heroic trait? What do we see as being a villainous trait? It really is a good way to touch upon what our morals as a society are and where we are and how we feel about the world around us. And so that's something I love about it. And I know there are people that say, I miss when, superheroes didn't have that, but I think that's always been inherently part of why superheroes exist. It is a way for us to look at what we consider to be the ideal. What do we aspire to be? And I am a little concerned because I've already seen some people online, I think kind of missing the point with what they're trying to do, what they're saying about the world through showing us Earth X like this. And even Augie, there's some people that still think Augie's a bad guy or that he was a terrible dad I've seen online. And I'm just I don't know. Definitely don't think that's what's going on, especially if you watch the podcast. But even when I watched the episode before I watched the podcast, I felt that way. So Yeah, I hope that a lot of people are fully comprehending, I think, what the episode's trying to say and trying to do, and that it's speaking to a lot of people. It spoke to me, and I know a lot of other people that it spoke to, but I always do worry when we have something that's, got so many layers. I think sometimes it's hard for people to really comprehend what's going on, I guess, or to see it in the way that maybe I see it. I mean, everyone sees things differently, and that's also, art is what you make of it. All opinions are valid. Anyways, I've talked for far too long about this. That's because this episode was so amazing. I personally feel that this episode overall, it's another 6 out of 5, baby. I don't know what to tell you. How could it be better than the best? It just is. I cannot wait when this season is done to just go back and watch it all, because there's so much here that I love and that I can't wait to revisit. One more episode left, one more title sequence left, and I am very sad but excited to see where we go next. And I think it's weird because it feels maybe like episode 7 wrapped up a lot of stuff, but they did say that the next episode is going to be very Adebayo focused, it seems. Or, Danielle Brooks is going to have there's some big moments that she has in this next episode, is what they were saying on the podcast. And she's my favorite character, so I can't wait to see what they do with Adebayo. Anyways, we shall see. Until next time, friends, as always, stay nerdy, and let me know what you thought of this episode down in the comments below. Also, if you like when I talk about stuff like this, you need to check this video out, because that is another thing that I've discussed that I think you would enjoy. That's all I have. Until next time, stay nerdy.